I find that levels of success in almost any industry or area correlate to a person asking great questions. In some cases, they seem absurd. In fact, the hallmark, in a way, of great questions is they sound completely ridiculous. So someone might ask, like Peter Thiel, why can't you achieve your 10-year goals in the next 6 months? As a thought exercise, that's a good question to answer for yourself. And these types of questions come up surprisingly often with very, very impressive folks, whether it's in business, military, entertainment, or otherwise. And the way you can get better at questions is by studying interviews in part. So I studied Larry King, I studied Charlie Rose, I studied Terry Gross, I studied go down the list. I studied Tony Robbins, who does in-person, one-on-one interventions at his events in front of 10,000, 5,000 people. And he's just genius with how he uses questions to like pattern interrupt and grab someone's attention and divert them in a more productive direction. Now, why is that relevant? It's relevant because thinking is the process of asking questions. You're asking yourself questions and then you're answering them in your own head. So if you get better at asking other people questions, you get better at asking yourself questions, which means you're improving your thought performance and level of thinking.
I'm in meetings a lot. My calendar gets very full with those. And then at night, after the kids have gone to bed, I'm on email a great deal. I get messages during the day. That's my chance to give long responses. And then over the weekend, I send a lot of mail as well. I take 2 weeks a year to just go off and read and think, where I'm not interrupted by work or anything else. I'm just solidly trying to think about the future, and people get to send me things to read as part of that so-called Think Week. So it's a nice mix of things. About 25% of the time that I'm out traveling around, meeting with customers, Europe, Asia, and that sort of helps me think, okay, do we have the right priorities? What are people responding well to, and what would they like to see us do better?
Everyone has a problem with time, but the day has 24 hours, and we sleep 6. Now, I know there's some out there that say, whoa, I need 8. Well, I say just sleep a little faster, because the bottom line is we have 6 hours of sleep, 24 hours are available, so you have 18 hours now available to your work, your family, your hobbies, and also to learn something new or to do something new, which could easily be that you want to learn a new language, or that you want to read as a New Year's resolution, I have to read a book every week, or you say, I'm gonna go and reshape my body. So you're gonna go and take this hour out of your schedule and say, I'm gonna train an hour every day. So this is, for most people, a huge challenge, but it is totally doable, I can tell them, because the kind of things that I did when I came to this country, I mean, I went to school, I was working in construction, I was working out my 5 hours a day, I was taking acting classes from 8 o'clock at night to 12 midnight. I was doing all of those things. I wanted to make sure that out of the 24 hours of the day, that I don't waste one single hour. Those hours were too precious. And so there I just want to tell people, don't give me this thing, I have a difficult time with the time and I don't have time for this and I don't have that. You have time, you make the time.
I mean, I think the difference between someone who ultimately is successful and someone who isn't is just getting up and trying again. And I feel like I've seen that in my life, again, to other people, is that things get hard and people try again, and things get hard and people might try again, might not, and then things get hard and they just don't try again. And giving up can't be an option. And I think that goes back to the core of making sure that whatever it is you're doing is something that you love to do, something that you enjoy, something that maybe if you didn't even get paid, would you still do it? And I think that's what pulls you through those times ultimately, but and that's what keeps you coming back for more, and that's what that passion and that love for what it is that you do is what keeps you going.
So would you say your resilience and that persistence is because you love what you do so much, or is there something about your parents or anything in your upbringing? Do you think it's...
I mean, I think that genetically I have I'm determined because my dad was very much like that, for sure, very persistent and determined. But I think it's also because I found something that I love to do. And there's plenty of other stuff that I've done that I didn't keep doing. I mean, I didn't keep playing basketball, let's face it. But I kept racing. And so it was about finding that, I feel. And finding it really young. I'm very fortunate that I found it really young. And I tell everyone, young or old, is just if you could do anything in the world, what would you do? Well, why can't you do that then? At least start. At least try to make an effort at doing it. You're not going to get there within one shot, but you just got to take baby steps and opportunities along the way. And I feel like, especially like people get out of college and they have this idea of what they want to do and they're holding out until they get it. Just get going. Just get working and get the experience and start working your way there.
It's so hard. I thought doing this research, I thought going into it, there were authentic people and inauthentic people. I did not find any evidence of that at all. What I found is authenticity is a practice, and you choose it every day, sometimes every hour of every day. And it's a practice. It's not, I just wake up and, hey, I'm authentic. It's that when you walk into a meeting, you have to make the choice. Am I gonna show up and let myself be seen? Am I gonna raise my hand and say, wow, y'all look super excited. I don't know what in the hell you're talking about. I'm so lost. That's a choice.
Yes,
Right? And make that authentic choice, you gotta let go of
the fakeroo, I say.
Yeah.
I call it the fakeroo. But you know what? I have found, I consider myself to be an authentic person, but when I am inauthentic is when I've allowed myself to be around people who were not, and then I have to fake it to be with them.
Oh, for sure, it's contagious.
Yes. So they're faking it,
Yeah.
and you're in that situation when you do that, that kind of, you're laughing at jokes that aren't funny, you're pretending to be comfortable when you're not, and lose your own authenticity.
Yeah, and I do it.
I say to my girls all of the time that your real work is to figure out where your power base is and to work on the alignment of your personality, your gifts that you have to give, with the real reason why you're here. That's the number one thing you have to do, is to work on yourself and to fill yourself up and keep your cup full. Keep yourself full. Now, I used to be afraid of that. I used to be afraid, particularly from people who say, oh, she's so full of herself. She's so full of herself. And now I embrace it. I consider it a compliment that I am full of myself. Because only when you're full, I'm overflowing, my cup runneth over. I have so much to offer and so much to give. And I am not afraid of honoring myself, It's miraculous when you think about it.
Every single day that we wake up, we have been gifted the opportunity of choice. You can choose to be happy or you can choose to be sad. I don't care what your situation is. You should never allow your situation to define who you are as a person. I know I lived out of my car for 2.5 years. And you know the story that I told myself in my head every day, all day long? Why does this person get this? Why does this always keep happening to me? Why do I keep getting this girlfriend, this kind of girlfriend? Why does this happen to me? How come this person got this record deal and I didn't? How come this person, why? Oh, poor pity me. Shut up, Garen Jones. The outside is the physical manifestation of what goes on inside the brain. Things do not just happen. No one just rear ends your car. You don't just become broke. Broke is a mindset. Things don't just happen. Your pocketbook is not just below balance or on zero. You're not just by chance you're just overweight. Things don't just happen. I wasn't just living out of my car for 2.5 years. The outside is the physical manifestation of what goes on inside the brain. Just like you can think yourself sad or mad or broke and all of these things, you can also think yourself happy. I'm telling you, coming from a guy that lived out of his car for 2.5 years, I have stuff that I haven't even posted online. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day month, like month, year. It was so bad that I was numb with emotions, crying myself to sleep in my Jeep. How does a guy with so much passion live in his car for 2.5 years? It was all because of me. I deserved to live in my car. I deserved to be broke. I deserved not to have the opportunities that I should have been getting. And they weren't for me. But I'll tell you what was for me. I woke up every day with an opportunity to choose different. If you want something different, you have to do something different. It's that simple. You want something different in life, you have to do something different.
You stare at your past and you'll end up staying there. It's okay to look back and admire it, but you carry on. I'm not in the business of staring back at it. You know what I mean? And getting lost back there. People say a loss can make or break a fighter, but trust me, a win can also make or break a fighter because they get comfortable with a win. People can get comfortable with a win, and slack off then. Slack off on the training. Slack off on the diet. They've won one. They're winners now. That's not me. You know, you sleep on a win and you'll wake up with a loss. So I just carry on, keep doing what I'm doing. And that's why this turnaround is so good for me. Vegas, straight away. The Fighting Irish head to the fighting capital. It's perfect. Continue on this path, the freight train straight to the top.
I mean, doing the same thing, I mean, just being known for like one thing your whole life, that's sad, you know? We all have so many interests, I'm sure. And so, you know, to get to make jobs of them all, or jobs, if you could call it that, but to make businesses out of them all, and see them on a daily basis in your light and how you visualize them is really cool and fun, and we can all do it. Mm-hmm. We all can do it. So many people are so afraid to try something because they're like, oh, like, I can't leave my job because I have to pay bills, or, it's like, well, start small then. But don't say you can't, because as many times as you say you can, you're not going to. If you don't think you can, you won't. Thoughts become things.
Yeah, you just gotta have the fearlessness to really take those shots, because you miss those shots, then you have to deal with the criticism, you have to deal with
us talking about it, right?
Right. So, and a lot of times, a lot of people kind of get a little apprehensive about taking those shots because of that.
Right when we mentioned it, it seemed like you started smiling already, just thinking about the word.
Yeah, well, it's always been a myth to me as to why certain people don't really like those situations because of the pressure, because we've all lost games before. So it's not like by you missing that shot, you're about to face something that you will never face again or haven't faced in the past. You know what I mean? We've all come up short at one time or another. So you just gotta kind of let it all hang out and trust your skills and trust the work that you've put in.
A lot of people come to me and they say, well, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I go, oh, that's great. What's your idea? And they go, well, I don't have one yet. And I say, well, I think you should go get a job as a busboy or something until you find something you're really passionate about, because it's a lot of work. And I'm convinced that about half of what separates the successful entrepreneurs from the non-successful ones is pure perseverance. It is so hard. You pour so much of your life into this thing, and there are such rough moments in time that most people give up. I don't blame them. I mean, it's really tough, and it consumes your life. I mean, if you've got a family and you're in the early days of a company, I can't imagine how one could do it. I'm sure it's been done, but it's rough. I mean, because it's pretty much an 18-hour-a-day job, 7 days a week for a while. So unless you have a lot of passion about this, you're going to not survive. You're going to give it up. So you got to have an idea or a problem or a wrong that you want to right that you're passionate about. Otherwise, you're not going to have the perseverance to stick it through. And I think that's half the battle right there. It's hard to remember how bad it was, in early 80s, with IBM taking over the world with the PC, with DOS out there. It was far worse than the Apple II. And they tried to copy the Apple II, and they'd done a pretty bad job, and you needed to know a lot. And so things were kind of slipping backwards. And Macintosh was, you saw the 1984 commercial, I hope you have that in your archives. You know, Macintosh was basically this this relatively small company, you know, in Cupertino, California, taking on the Goliath, IBM, and saying, wait a minute, your way is wrong. This is not the way we want computers to go. This is not the legacy we want to leave. This is not what we want our kids to be learning. This is wrong, and we are going to show you the right way to do it. And here it is, it's called Macintosh, and this is so much better that it's going to beat you. And we are going to do it. And that's what Apple stood for.
I think that women can be respected and liked at the same time. There's a new book that came out, and I'm not hawking the book, even though she's a dear friend of mine. The book is called Leading Lady, and it's a biography of Sherry Lansing, who was the first female president of a major motion picture movie studio. She's probably the most beloved woman in Hollywood, who would think nothing of cutting you off at the knees in a negotiation. But she did it in a way that you almost felt felt good when you left the office. If you pick up the book, it really exemplifies what I'm saying to you. You demand your worth. You have to excel. You never make a threat that you're not prepared to back up. If I said to my company, if I don't get what's on this little card that I want for the next 3 years, I'm leaving. I couldn't do this myself without you. And they believed me. I'm not going to tell you whether I would have done it or not. But they believed me because I could have. And I had that kind of confidence. So you can only have that kind of confidence if you make yourself indispensable at your job, whatever your job is, whether you're someone's secretary or assistant or dentist or hairdresser, or my makeup artist is invaluable to me, not because somebody else couldn't do my makeup, but she has a great spirit. So when I come into work, she gets me going. So she's made herself irreplaceable. So whatever she asks, we give her. And that gives you confidence. So you can be liked and respected. But if I had to choose between being liked and being respected, I would choose being respected.
If you're in politics, the media, the tech industry, working as an entrepreneur or a teacher or a construction worker or a caregiver, you know the problems we are all facing. And I urge each one of you to ask yourselves, what do we do now? That's a big question. What is it in your life that you think you cannot accomplish? Or what is it that people have said that you cannot do? Wouldn't it feel really good to prove them all wrong?
I have a lot of moments where I'm like shy and I don't want to be, I want to be like away from people, but I think certain challenges always make me have to step it up, and so I push myself a lot. Life begins outside of your comfort zone, and sometimes it's good to push yourself and do the unexpected, and you never know what you might find.
It took a couple months to realize. I was 17 at the time. I just finished high school 2 months earlier, and I'm now living in Melbourne. I was playing catch up really quickly anyway. I was living on my own in a new city where I'd never met anyone, 2-hour flight away from anyone I knew, and I had no money, and I was just trying to find couches to sleep on at that point. Plus, before you're 18, you can't sign up and get electricity bills and stuff like that. So no one would rent a place to me. I didn't have any money. The whole thing was I was just trying to keep my head above water at that point. And then once it settled in, I kind of got settled there, and I was working constantly. Then that's when I thought oh, yeah, I've seen people make the jump from here to America. So my choices are either stay on, be good enough to stay on this show for decades, the way some cast members have, which, you'd have a lovely life in Melbourne, or you screw it up and you get fired, which I obviously didn't want to take that option, or try and make the transition to the American industry, try and move to LA and do pilot season, as I had seen a few cast members do at that point. So that was my goal.
Any fear when you made the flight?
Yes, but it wasn't as scary. Yes, definitely, but it wasn't as scary as that first move to Melbourne. That first move to Melbourne was terrifying because I was just, you know, like I said, I didn't have money at the time. I didn't have any. I didn't know anyone. At least when I moved to LA, like when I did that flight to LA, I knew 2 people there already who had already been on Neighbours, and I had my money saved. So if anything went really wrong, I knew I could afford to get in a cab, drive to the airport, and buy a ticket home. And so like that's all I needed to know. I was like, cool, I'm sweet. Whatever happens, like if anything goes really wrong, I can always afford to fly home. It'll be fine.
And did it ever, once you got here, did it ever seem like anything was going really wrong, or?
Yeah, there's obviously like the ups and downs and like the crazy, as anyone who's moved to a new city before, I'm sure they've had crazy experiences, so I had all that for sure. But no, it was fine. It would have had to take a lot to make me fly home. I was like, I will not be a failure. I came here and I'm not going home until I've made it in this business. So
I have an old-fashioned belief that I can only should expect to make money in things that I understand. And when I say understand, I don't mean understand, you know, what the product does or anything like that. I mean understand what the economics of the business are likely to look like 10 years from now or 20 years from now. I know, in general, what the economics of, say, Wrigley chewing gum will look like 10 years from now. The internet isn't going to change the way people chew gum. It isn't going to change which gum they chew. You know, if you own the chewing gum market in a big way, and you've got Double Mint and Spearmint and Juicy Fruit, those brands will be there 10 years from now. So I can't pinpoint exactly what the numbers are going to look like on Wrigley, but I'm not going to be way off if I try to look forward on something like that. That evaluating that company is within what I call my circle of competence. I understand what they do, I understand the economics of it, I understand the competitive aspects of the business. So figuring out the economic consequences, TV, I think there's, I don't know, 20, 25 million sets a year sold in the United States. I don't think there's one of them made in the United States anymore. I mean, you'd say TV set manufacturer, what a wonderful business. I mean, everybody, now nobody had a TV in 1950, or thereabouts, 45 to 50. Everybody has multiple sets now, but nobody in the United States has made any real money making the sets. They're all out of business. You know, the Magnavoxes, the RCAs, all of those companies. Radio was the equivalent of over 500 companies making radios in the 1920s. Again, I don't think there's a U.S. radio manufacturer at the present time. But Coca-Cola, you know, what was it, 1884 at Jacobs Pharmacy or whatever, the fellow comes up with something. A lot of copiers over the years, but now you've got a company that is selling roughly 1.1 billion 8-ounce servings of its product, not all Coke, Sprite, and some others, daily throughout the world 117 years later. So understanding the economic characteristics of a business is different than predicting the fact that an industry is going to do wonderfully. And so when I look at the internet businesses, or I look at tech businesses, I say this is a marvelous thing, and I love to play around on the computer, and I order my books from Amazon and all kinds of things, but I don't know who's going to win. And unless I know who's going to win, I'm not interested in investing. I'll just play around on the computer. And defining your circle of competence is the most important aspect of investing. It's not how important, how large your circle is. You don't have to be an expert on everything. But knowing where the perimeter of that circle of what you know and what you don't know is, and staying inside of it, is all important. Tom Watson Sr., who started IBM, said in his book, he said, I'm no genius, he said, but I'm smart in spots, and I stay around those spots. And you know, that is the key. So if I understand a few things, and I stick in that arena, I'll do okay. And if I don't understand something, but I get all excited about it because my neighbors are talking about it, the stocks are going up and everything, I start fooling around someplace else, eventually I'll get green, and I should.
I tend to be incredibly modest in terms of describing your talents, and you always seem to belittle your abilities to a certain extent, when clearly there's a reason why this everything you do has been working out. I was reading about how you said that to a certain extent that comes from your punk rock roots.
Yep, there's no other choice. In those days, there was no idea of this makes money. There's no idea of like, this is my future. It was like a week at a time. We have 5 shows. We're gonna get to Sunday. Whew. And even those days were like fraught with turbulence. And so I never really saw a future. None of us did. And some of us, you know, didn't make it. Some of them are dead. And some of them are just kind of trying to recreate their past. And so I realized that I have to be very hardworking because I don't have kind of the ease of talent. And I come from that. And I think in a way, a lot of ways it served me very well in that I am as kind of hardworking as I've ever been, completely without confidence. I have none. I don't want any, because I think you turn your back on the thing, and that's when you get gored. Is when you think I got this. I never think I got this. I think, oh man, don't screw this up. And I go at everything, like including you and I sitting here right now. I'm trying to be fully engaged, and that intensity I think has served me quite well. But it comes from punk rock, absolutely. Last boss I ever had was my boss at Haagen-Dazs, my ice cream job. And to this day, he still comes to my shows. And whenever I see Steve, who got me my first apartment, I was living in my car, he believed in me. Whenever I see him, I get all weepy. I always tell him, it's good to see you, sir. Henry, you can call me Steve. I can't do that, sir. Because he trusted me with his money. And I said, let me run your store. I know how to do this. I can do this. He's like, well, if you screw up, you're out of here. I said, I won't screw up. And I ended up I ran his store. And so, but it was anger that said, I'll be here all damn week. I'll get this whole thing right. I fired his staff and rehired a bunch of people who can really work. And it was out of anger. Like, I'll be back in 4 hours to run this $3.75 an hour job into the ground. And then I joined Black Flag, and I thought I was a hardworking person. Then you meet the guys in Black Flag who are so driven. You see Greg Ginn work 23-hour days. Like, Greg, you're still on the phone. I know. Greg, when did you eat? I don't know. Greg, when was the last time you showered? Do we have a shower? Like, the guy, we were not going to be stopped. And I kind of go at that intensity, kind of anything I do. Like, you're a very calm, good-looking young man. Look at me, I'm a spaz sitting next to you. Like, I'm doing an interview with you. I can't help it.
Focused.
I'm sweating, man. And so, but I'm like this going to the airport, like 10 miles out. And so, it's anger that has informed kind of my life, and unflatteringly, a sense of vengeance. Every damn person who said I wouldn't be anything, I'm crushing them every day. Everybody I had to endure in any band I was in, every day into a powder. Yeah. Thank you. And I wish them no ill. I just wish to shine brighter. And if it burns my body to a crisp, I'm happy to go right now.
You can't really form other people's opinions of you. And, you know, I became successful at a very young age, and like from the first day after winning Wimbledon, you know, you would think like a teenager wins Wimbledon, but not everyone was positive about it. Everyone wanted to know the story and, you know, blaming my parents for having their child to go through this crazy journey and working hard and not having a normal childhood. Like, everyone is always going to find something in your success or in your story or upbringing that will try to knock you down, like literally. Whether it's their purpose, whether it's a news outlet, whatever it might be, you never know the intention. But yeah, I don't want to form people's opinion. I just want to be and live true to who I am every day. And then that's the only thing that I can do. You can't really control what other people think of you or how they end up remembering you.
I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was, and began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to me. I was set free because my greatest fear had been realized, and I was still alive, and I still had a daughter whom I adored, and I had an old typewriter and a big idea. And so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. It is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all.
So you consider yourself lucky?
Very lucky, yeah.
But you have to have talent to meet the luck, right?
Somebody hands you the ball, and you run, you know. I mean, and if you get hit, or maybe you make it through. You never know. But I mean, I just know that somebody handed me the ball at a certain point, and I was hungry enough to keep running, and I'm still running. I maintain a hunger, but not an ambition. You know, I'm very happy to explore all possibilities of a character and really, you know, dive in to the role. I mean, to the point of where, you know, Disney wanted to fire me.
They wanted to fire you from Pirates?
Yeah.
Because?
They couldn't understand what I was doing, you know. They didn't understand the character. They were contemplating subtitling the film, you know.
Yeah, I started working at this video store, was pretty much what you're talking about around that time. And it was great at first, because I'd always hated day jobs and stuff, and so I got a day job, and it ended up being pretty good. But admittedly, I was there for 5 years. At a certain point, it was a narcotic, all right? I didn't have to keep pursuing my dreams, because, you know, it's not what I want to do, but it's sort of kind of close. And if I didn't have an artist soul burning in me, I could have made myself happy with that. I could, if I didn't have an artist soul burning to get out, I could have, you know, walked backwards a couple steps and just done that. And that would have been a fulfilling, well, to anybody else, it would have been a fulfilling life. It wouldn't have been for me, because I would have known I would have had something to say that I didn't get a chance to say. But it did put me to sleep for a while. And I've always just thought, I mean, what really got everything kind of truly going for me, you could point out a lot of different things, but the bottom line is the fact that I realized that even the group of people I hung around with, they were all great fellas and great gals. But, you know, it was easy for me to think that I was doing a lot because I was doing more to try to move myself forward than they were. But, you know, that's not, okay, I'm a big fish in a puddle. So what, all right? They're not doing anything, all right? So yeah, I'm doing more than them. But I realized that actually I need to get my ass out to Hollywood and meet other people who are, you know, like in my category or working a little higher, and I should be the weakest link in my chain that I have, and that'll make me be stronger, it'll make me run faster. I mean, like an analogy I've always used is, all right, if you run the 100-yard dash with people that can't run as fast as you, yeah, you'll win, hands down, you know that. But if you run with people much faster than you, all right, yeah, you might come in last every single time, but your time will be better. Because they're making you run all the faster. They're making you dig down just a little bit more. It doesn't matter that you won, your time is faster. And that's what I knew I had to do. I had to get out of Loserville and throw myself into a place where, like, this is what I do for a living.
One night, Chris had gone to bed. I'd been struggling. We still had all the same problems. We still had a lien on the house, still facing bankruptcy, still fighting like crazy. I was still unemployed. They still hadn't figured out like the solution yet for the business. And I was about to turn off the TV, and there on the TV, there was this rocket launching, and I thought, oh my gosh, that is it. I am gonna launch myself out of bed like a rocket ship, like NASA, right here, had launched me out of that bed. And I'm gonna move so fast that I don't think. I'm gonna beat my brain. Now, here's a really interesting point. I talk a lot about your instincts and inner wisdom. And we can get into this a little bit later, but a lot of us talk about the fact that you have a gut feeling. But what all this research that I've done for the book and all the speaking that I do, what I've discovered that's fascinating is actually when you set goals, when you have an intention on something that you want to change about your life, your brain helps you. What it does is it opens up a checklist. And then your brain goes to work trying to remind you of that intention that you set. And it's really important to develop the skill, and I say that word purposefully, the skill of knowing how to hear that inner wisdom and that intention kicking in and leaning into it quickly. So for me, my brain saying, that's it, right there, move as fast as a rocket, Mel. I wanted to change my life. And I think most people that are miserable or that are really like dying to be great and dying to have more. We want to change. We want to live a better life. We want to create more for our families. We want to be happier. The desire is there. Again, it's about how do you go from knowledge to action. So the first thing in this story that's important is realizing that the answer was in me. And my mind was telling me, pay attention. Could have also been the bourbon. I had a couple of Manhattans that night. But anyway, the next morning, the alarm goes off, and I pretended NASA was there. It's the stupidest story. I literally went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I counted out loud, and then I stood up. And I'll never forget standing there in my bedroom. It was dark, it was cold, it was winter in Boston. And for the first time in 3 months, I had beaten my habit of hitting the snooze button. I couldn't believe it, and I thought, wait a minute. Counting backwards? That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Well, the next morning I used it again and it worked. The next morning I used it again and it worked. The next morning I used it again and it worked. And then I started to notice something really interesting. There were moments all day long, just like that 5-second moment in bed, where I knew, knowledge, what I should do. And if I didn't move within 5 seconds, my brain would step in and talk me out of it. Every human being has a 5-second window, might even be shorter for you. You have about a 5-second window in which you can move from idea to action before your brain kicks into full gear and sabotages any change in behavior. Because remember, your brain is wired to stop you from doing things that are uncomfortable or uncertain or scary. It's your job to learn how to move from those ideas that could change everything into acting on them.
My daughters would say to you that what I've always told them and what they've told me is to follow my dreams, follow their dreams. I remember one particular incident, and my daughter Tara is here, so she's going to be embarrassed if I tell you the story. She was at the Convent of the Sacred Heart in Greenwich all her life. She went there when she was 3. She just graduated a few months ago. And in Sacred Heart, I think the 3rd Wednesday of every month, they have a mother's coffee. I think that's a plot against working women. Because how can I show up at a mother's coffee on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock? So I didn't. So Tara would say, Mom, you didn't show up for mother's coffee. The first couple of times I went through guilt. So 3rd time I said, wait, got to come up with some coping mechanism here. So the next time she said, Mom, you didn't come for class coffee. I go, yeah, but so-and-so didn't come, so-and-so didn't come, XYZ didn't come. So it was my way of saying, I'm not that bad a mom, you know. They didn't show up too. Which was true. Many of them didn't show up.
Good, you outed them, that was nice.
No, it's a coping mechanism. We all have to find our own coping mechanisms. But, so then when she came back home that evening, I said, Tara, you know, you keep saying I don't make your class coffees. Would you like me to quit my job and stay home? I asked her this question. And I thought she'd say, yeah, great idea, do that. She looked at me and she said, Mom, are you nuts? You worked so hard to get here. Follow your dreams, Mom, I'll be okay.
Wow.
This was 12-year-old. That's what she said to me. I have never forgotten that answer. I have never forgotten that answer because both my kids said to me, Mom, follow your dreams. You came to the United States with nothing, $50 in your pocket. And you know, I worked as a receptionist at Yale from midnight to 5 a.m. because that paid $3.85 an hour versus $3.35, which was the minimum wage. I wanted that 50 cents more an hour because if I didn't have that, I couldn't buy groceries end of the month. And so that's what I did to put myself through school. And I've told them these stories. So they look at all that and they go, Mom, you've done so much to get here. Follow your dreams. So I tell them always, Willow, follow your dreams.
I've been making music now with, like Tony Bennett for a couple of years, and Elton John is, one of my closest friends, and his husband David. And they just have showed me that, like, I'm a baby. in my artistry, you know, and I just have to keep making music and keep going. And so my focus really for this album is showing that to young girls and to boys that want to make music, that you don't have to get lucky on the internet. It's not a social media game. You don't have to find the hot producer and get the hot track, you know, to be a star. You can just learn how to play an instrument and sit in your room and practice and write songs and poetry, and then you can go around the corner to the bar and meet other artists that do the same thing that you do, and you can hang out and talk about music and write songs, and then you can play at the spot around the corner and gain one fan and then do it over and over and over again until you're discovered.
I just didn't spend money on myself. I just dumped all the profit back in the business, and we were buying vintage stuff, you know, for years that it costs $5, $10, $15, $50, and you're selling it for, you know, $100, $200, $1,000. I mean, I bought things for $8 that I've sold for $1,000, and that's really good cash flow, right? I didn't know what that word even meant, you know, but it was just like, it looked really good, just like building in the bank.
You're gonna play big, say big. Big. You're gonna play huge, say huge. Huge. You're gonna play ginormous, say ginormous. But first, take baby steps. You're gonna eat the elephant, but take one small bite first, chew it good. Right? We want so much so fast. My grandmother says baby, she starts every sentence with baby. I'm sure it's because she cannot remember all of our names. She said, baby, the best things you'll ever have from grandma will never come from the microwave. They always come from the oven. And I was like, I think somehow she's trying to give me a lesson here. And I realized that the best things that you're gonna create are gonna take time. Build it on cement, not sinking sand. You're gonna get tons and tons and tons of tools here. And you're gonna wanna fast forward. When you fast forward, you build it on plexiglass, you build it on styrofoam, you build it on wood, you wanna build it on cement. Your dream is important enough to outlive you. Yes, yes? And so I realized that you can't Google download resiliency. You can't Google download tenacity. You can't Google download forgiveness. They're some of the best qualities and characteristics that's gonna take you a long way that you need to invest time in and energy in and intention in. You don't just get patience. I want patience, I'm waiting for patience. Somebody's gonna piss you off tomorrow. And now you get to test if you have patience. I realized that as I wanted to develop me, I had to be willing to climb, and I wanted to get to the top, and there's no elevator to the top. I gotta do my squats. I gotta work on my quads and my hamstrings and my calves, because I gotta climb to the top. We gotta climb.
You've got this, I really like the titles, I really wanna go after it, I'm way intense, I wanna win, I'm all in. Getting in that kind of shape is brutally difficult, but then at the same time you can balance it with the playfulness, and it's not all about that. How have you learned to strike that balance, and maybe more importantly, how do you teach other people to do that?
I've learned if I don't learn to strike that balance, that when I go too extreme in either one, I'm not happy. I feel very scattered, I feel frantic, I feel crazy. So I think that for me, when I start feeling a little bit chaotic, so for me it shows up in a very like grasping for straws. Things aren't happening, like I'm running into a wall, like the feeling of banging your head against a wall. That's what it feels like for me. And I know a lot of people can relate to that, and I think especially a lot of people in fitness might get into it to kind of like, maybe they're anxious or it calms their nerves, because I think I run really on the anxious side. So for me, if I don't learn how to control that, I'll go to the extreme of something. So it's a must for me. I actually think it's a must for everyone to kind of find how to dance in the different categories of your life, because we're not just one thing. And when we go all in on one thing, we're severely neglecting the other parts of us, which makes for an empty human, you know, which makes for someone who never feels full. So I have to remember that there's so many parts of me that I need to make sure that I'm fulfilling.
I feel really shitty after drinking because I don't ever drink.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. I feel like you make decisions, you cut things out, your diet, and put them in based on, one, what your goal is, and two, what are your non-negotiables? Like, what makes you happy?
Right.
Like,
non-negotiable.
Having like a beer on the weekend, because that's what you like, and the social aspect's awesome, like, cool. That and there's nothing wrong with that. I think when you start looking at something because you're making, maybe your new goal is like, something's wrong with your health, right? Now it's like, okay, well now what is the most important? And is that more important than a beer? Well, yeah. Well, then I can get rid of the beer. It's always should be like, what's my goal? And then what are the things? Like, also, happiness is very important too. You know, like after realizing it so many times, I'm just a happier person. I feel better if I'm not hungover.
For me, I, at a very rough time in my life, sat down and became very specific about writing down, what am I good at? What do I know how to do? And one of the things on my list was sales, and I've been selling fax machines door to door. And then I said, you know, I wrote down the words, I want to come up with an idea I can send to millions of people, sell to millions of people. So I was very specific. So I would tell these people, what do you want? Take the time to sit with yourself and be specific and ask for it.
I knew that I wanted to change my life. I knew that I didn't want to go down the path that I was going down because I got scared, and fear is a great motivator.
You want to know what I have learned about myself and what I have learned about every great salesman or entrepreneur I've ever worked with? If you can get in the habit of going through the door without the answer, and our education system tends to make you want to have the answer. If you walk through that door, people are amazingly smart. Once you're in there in hot water, you discover the answer.
I think it's very important to talk to people. And if you're a new business and a young business or even an old business, nothing is better than picking up the phone and talking to people. You know, how many times do things get lost in translation when you're sending emails? And I think that it's very important to be confident in business, not arrogant. You know, confidence is being certain that you're good at what you do, you're brilliant at what you do, and you can deliver what people want.
I really think that every athlete is a little bit superstitious, and if an athlete tells you otherwise, I think they're lying. So yes, I do a couple of things. I definitely put on my right sock before my left sock, and I like to take a nap at the same time and eat the same things, and then right before the game, I like to do a lot of mental visualization. So I'll go in a locker and just put on headphones and just imagine myself in the game.
I started working out of my apartment with a team of 2 who helped me turn my concept into a reality around my kitchen table for 2 years. Like most startups, we had to fundraise. I asked a lot of people I knew to invest, including some people who didn't have a tremendous amount of money. So I told them, only invest if you're prepared to lose it. I was so scared. In the end, over 100 people invested. With that money and a personal investment, we set up an office in Hong Kong for sourcing and production.
I tell young people starting out, find something that you love. Find people that you want to work with. Find a company whose ethics and values you subscribe to. And what I always say to people, if you are not entirely comfortable with the people that you're working with and how they are behaving, run, do not walk for the exits.
What inspired me to go into fashion when I was leaving the banking industry was the fact that I knew that I had creative talents. I knew that I wanted to set up my own business because I was no longer enjoying working where I was working because I didn't go to university, and I noticed that those who had university degrees that were being brought in were being brought in above me, despite the fact that I had moved into the banking proper sector of the bank. So I decided that was the time to move on. I resigned, although the managing director at the time refused to accept my resignation for 3 days. And I told him I was going to come back with the same letter after 3 days. So he was forced to let me go.
You will never know the answer unless if you ask. And that's what my father always taught me. He's like, you're never going to know if you don't ask. So ask. And that's what I do. And that's kind of how I also I communicate with my team. We know we're a team, but also we know that we can talk very directly to each other because that's how we set it up from the beginning. Right. And whoever the boss is, you set the tone. You know, this is your arena. So however you set the tone is the way things are going to go. So I always set the tone with kindness first, and then let's get ish done, baby.